Okay, in this video I'm going to talk about some common problems people have when they use input, specifically reading in things other than strings. So let's declare a variable, a string variable, and let's declare an integer variable, right? Okay, now if I'm going to ask the user to enter in a number, for instance, right, I might say, please enter a number, right? And then I would say I equals in.nextInt, right? And in is my scanner variable, and I is the integer variable, right? And then at the end of the program, right, I would say your program is ending, right? And I could display the variable that they typed in, right? So if, I could display the number you entered is, and then put I after that, right? So if I run this program, I see that it says, please enter a number. I'll type 23, and it says the number you entered is 23, program is ending. And everything's fine with that, right? Now the problem comes when I want to then ask them another question, like I want to say, now enter your name. Now enter your name, right? And I read that into my string. I declared an s here, so I say s equals in.next line, and then I'm going to print out the name they put in, right? So sysout, the name you entered was, right, and plus s, right? So what should happen, or what we think is going to happen, is it's going to read in a number, print out the number. It's going to ask them to enter your name, read that in, and print it out. So let's see what happens here if I run this. So I run it, it says, please enter a number, and I type 23. And then all of a sudden it says, the number you entered is 23, now enter your name. And look, it doesn't wait for me to enter my name, right? It doesn't wait for me to enter my name, which is interesting because next line is supposed to stop and wait for me to enter my name. And if I did comment out the beginning part, right, if I commented out all my work with the numbers, right, if the number, and I just start enter your name and print the name, if I do this, it's going to say, I say Bob, and it says the name you entered was Bob, program is ending. It sat there and waited for me to enter it, and everything worked fine. So what is this problem that people are faced with? And this is quite a tricky situation. Let me try to explain it and show you a couple of workarounds that you can do to avoid it. So when you use nextInt, the system sits there waiting for you to type a number, and then it reads that number in and puts it into this variable in this case. So let's say you were going to enter the number 8. You would hit on your keyboard, you would hit the key 8, and then you would hit the key for enter or return, right? You'd actually hit 2 keys. So those two key strokes are in the stream coming from the keyboard. nextInt says just take the number part of that stream. So it takes the 8 and it puts it in I. But that enter or that carriage return is still sitting in the stream. It's not used, right? So then it goes through and it prints out the number 8, and then it says, now enter your name, and then it hits this next line. Now next line says, give me everything up to and including an enter key or a carriage return, right? And the return key. Well, there is still that enter key left in the stream because nextInt didn't use it up. It was still sitting there. So what it does is it says, hey, I have a carriage return, and it takes everything in front of it, which is nothing, and stores it in S and moves right on without waiting because it already has a carriage return. So there's a couple ways to get around this. The first way is if you're reading in an integer or something other than a string, and you're going to enter a string after that, you can merely put in.next line after you read in the integer. And what does this do? This just consumes the enter key, the return key, so that after you're done these 2 lines, there's nothing left in the stream. So when it gets to this next line, it's actually going to sit and wait for it, right? So, and you'll notice I didn't even, for this one, I didn't even store it into a variable. I didn't say s equals because I don't need that. I'm just trying to consume that carriage return. So let's run it now and see what happens, right? So it says, please enter number 23. And now when it says now enter your name, it's waiting because this next line consumed that carriage return for me. So now if I type Bob, everything works fine. So that's one workaround to this problem with mixing next lines and next ints. Okay, another way we could do it, and I recommend this way personally, just consume the carriage return. But what we could do is we could read the number into a string, right? So instead of reading it into an integer, we could just read it into a string as a next line, right? Next line. And then we could convert it to the number. We could say, integer dot parse int and pass it the string that we read in and convert it after we read it in as a string. To me, this is kind of pointless, right? If we don't need it as a string, why are we reading it in as a string? And then why are we going through the conversion of a string to an integer? But nonetheless, it would work, right? If I do this and run the code, enter number 23, it says the number you entered is 23, even though it was writing out the integer. So I successfully converted the string to an integer, and everything worked fine. Again, I would recommend not using this method, right? I would not recommend using that method. I would recommend just reading it directly in the way you want, in.nextInt, right? And then just consuming the carriage return so that it is ready for the next line after it. I would recommend this solution. However, this is another workable solution for you.